Vyvanse was supposed to help with my new ADHD and autism diagnosis, and I thought it would be an interesting experiment in consciousness, and it sure was. Not at all in any of the ways that I expected. So, hi, I'm Nikki, and I'm here today to tell you why I decided to quit Vyvanse, because I had some side effects that were not like the ones you see everybody else complaining about in internet forums. First, to be fair, I am going to quickly tell you the good sides of Vyvanse that I experienced. It did make my mind a lot quieter. I ended up with one train of thought consistently instead of like 30 competing trains of thoughts. And that was a really lovely experience. It also gave me more connection to my body and the ability to feel physical desire for some goal in life or money or buying things, because I just never really had that before. I just didn't know was a thing before I tried Vyvanse. It had a lot of positive effects on my mood and calmed my nervous system. I was definitely able to focus on tasks better, and it made me more productive if I was looking at something that I had been putting off for a long time, like the closet that needs reorganizing or that toolbox that's a huge mess. There was no energetic resistance between me and the idea of doing the thing, and that was pretty cool because that was also a totally new experience for me. But this video is about the reasons why I quit Vyvanse, so let's get on to the interesting side effects. First off, well, it made me a lot easier to focus. If I focused on the wrong thing, like a negative thing, I was completely lost in the fear and anxiety about that negative thing that I was focusing on. And no, this is not something where the solution is like, oh, you should do CBT training, because my dose of Vyvanse got me so locked into things that once I was 30 minutes late for an acupuncture appointment that's 5 minutes away from me, because I could not make myself get up and leave the computer to go to my appointment, even though I freaking love acupuncture. That's how little self-control I had, which was really interesting in the exploration of consciousness and how our relationship works with our body, and the fact that we are not our body, because we can be staring at it, telling it to do something, and even if you feel great and you're totally blissed out, your body's like, I'm going to keep doing this thing, thanks, okay, bye. On the other side of that, when I was on a really high dose of Vyvanse, like 60 milligrams, if my intention changed from something positive to negative when I was interacting with someone, within that moment, there was such a huge shift, and my body could physically react to try to distance me from that person, especially if it was an unexpected situation. And that was an incredibly uncomfortable experience. So definitely don't want that again. All in all, I would say that over the span of that year, I actually was less productive than normal because I could get so caught up on the total wrong thing. And I mean, historically, I've done that a lot, but I could also actually take action better. And I found that I wasn't taking action. I also found that because I was experiencing these high amounts of like positivity and love and good feelings like that, it made it a lot easier for me to just ignore my authentic self, like completely repress it and stay in situations like a relationship that was really, really wrong for me. And the meds made it way too easy to tolerate that situation, and it also made it really confusing when I was going between these great feelings, which I could accidentally attribute to the relationship, and these negative feelings because of things that were actually happening in the relationship. Does that make sense? The really weird part about this is how much my behavior and my sense of self changed while I was on Vyvanse, especially as the dose got higher and higher. I freaking love science. And the higher my dose went, the less that I was interested in science. Like, completely could not stand it. It seemed like the most ridiculous, fruitless thing ever to me, because I went totally spiritual. Now, this might have something to do with the fact that I was also trying to work through trauma and working naturally on this idea of how do we approach children with love instead of frustration. But because of Vyvanse, that got kicked into like mega gear. I just went to these places inside my head where I would go into this mega observer mode, and I'd be looking at people from the perspective of how their energy affects everybody else's energy, and how we all have these domino effects on each other that we don't normally realize in day-to-day life. At least I didn't realize in day-to-day life before I took Vyvanse. So that was all really complicated because definitely nobody could relate to it, and I wasn't my regular self at all. I became a totally different person. I listened to different music, I wore different clothing, I stopped watching movies completely, and at the end of that like year and a half maybe that I was on Vyvanse, I had a reckoning to come with, which was that Vyvanse wasn't fixing my life problems. Even if I was having moments where I was walking in the forest or sitting on my couch and I felt like melted butter because I felt so amazing, I realized that A lot of us chase after that feeling of bliss that people talk about when they talk about meditation and spirituality, but I didn't want it. It's not the answer because it didn't fix any of my life problems. It just made me feel like I could cope with all of my life problems. So I decided that I would rather change my life for the better by leaving my partner, even if that meant I lost my benefits and stopped taking Vyvanse. Afterwards, I was able to access it through a program if I wanted to, but I chose not to. It's been a really crazy ride to have a completely different conscious experience of the world and my body and everybody around me, and then come back down to who I was beforehand. And it's really drawn to my attention that there were so many more mental health struggles and nervous system struggles that I was trying to operate under that I had no recognition of at all because it was the way that I've always experienced life. I quit my medication in the summer while I was traveling in Northern Ontario with my son. That made it really easy to do because I was outside of daily life. Trying to come back into daily life after quitting Vyvanse was an entire other video that I will make. All this is to say, if you are thinking about medication, it's definitely worth taking. I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything in the world because they were really, really informative. I just maybe would have shortened the timeline that I was on that medication before quitting. I also am not totally done with medication for the rest of my life. In fact, I'm on my second day of Wellbutrin right now. So wherever you are in your journey of medication right now, whether you're considering it or you're already on it or you've already quit it, please drop that in the comments so we can connect. Because if we don't express these things out loud to each other, it can feel in our head like we are the only one.